So my name is Tom Quessy. I'm the head of digital sales here at LKCS. Today I'm going to be talking about identifying problems and making improvements to your website. So before we jump into it, for anyone who may not be familiar with us, I'd like to take a second to go over who we are here at LKCS. LKCS was founded on the core values of providing the best service, high quality, fast turnaround, and fair pricing. We continue to stand by these values today as we evolve our marketing, digital, print, mail, and statement services to fill the needs of our customers. We're a full service marketing company, and we've been in business since 1961. We work predominantly with financial institutions, but we provide a full range of products and services. Today we'll be talking and kind of focusing on website design. However, if there's anything else you're wanting to learn more about, please don't hesitate to reach out. So let's get into it. In this webinar, I'll be going over kind of the basic questions you need to ask yourself when thinking about your website and overall digital presence. Our main topics are going to be reviewing your website and identifying problems, meeting today's standards. So we'll kind of talk about digital design and mobile design, as well as dipping in a little bit into accessibility, providing a premium user experience. So in that kind of section, we'll be talking about both personalization and automation, how to kind of leverage those to your advantage, and asking yourself if your current website is generating the leads that you need. And then we'll kind of wrap up by talking about what to do after identifying any problems with any of these topics across the board. So usually the very first experience that your users will have with you will be online. So knowing this, a couple of the big questions are you using your digital marketing effectively? Will your website win them over when they finally do reach it? And once they're part of your organization, are you keeping them satisfied? If your digital marketing and website aren't able to provide a good user experience, then you have a gigantic problem right off the bat. There are tons of other competitors that are willing to provide a strong suite of digital services, whether it's another local institution or one of the big banking options that are available. You can't create a bad first impression that just let prospects slip away. The adoption of mobile and online banking increased significantly as a result of the pandemic, and I wouldn't expect that to change anytime soon or ever, really. People have gotten used to the ease and convenience that they can get from doing everything online. So how do you know when it's time to dive into a redesign or a revamp of your website or even your other digital services? Obviously, if the design is starting to look dated, there's an easy sign right there, but looks can be subjective, so it's good to ask yourself some more concrete questions. I think a great place to start is asking, are we meeting today's standards? So if your web presence isn't meeting the basic standards of the day, then you're turning away prospects at the door. This is more than just asking if your site's well designed. You need to determine whether your site is built for mobile devices, built for accessibility, and built with great user experience in mind. At this point, I don't imagine it will surprise anyone here that over 56% of worldwide website traffic is on mobile devices. So if somehow you're still convinced that the number of people browsing on mobile is small, hopefully this will be a bit of an overdue wake-up call. Most likely, over half of your users are browsing on some form of mobile device when they connect to your site. If your website is unintuitive to browse on a phone or a tablet, then you have huge issues. Being responsive to mobile devices isn't just a convenience. This is something that your users fully expect at this point. If your website isn't built to adapt to any screen size, at least when I go to a website, that's such a giant red flag. So let's go over some simple questions to identify these mobile problems. First off, do the users have to side scroll? This is such a big giveaway that there's issues. When viewed on a smaller device, if you have to scroll side to side to see the full width of the page, or even when using a tool that's embedded on the page, like a calculator or anything, if I have to scroll side to side and it doesn't adapt to my screen, ooh, there's some problems there. Are some of the elements illegible? So when sizing down for a small screen, do some of the elements or text size down to an illegible size where you can't read it or you can't actually access and use it? Do the pages lose their intended function? So if the functionality of your pages get ruined when a user views it on a smaller device, this is interfering with your main goals. If your answer to any of these questions is yes, then there are some very clear problems with your current design when it comes to mobile sizes. The next thing we want to look into is if your website's built to be accessible. Accessibility is an always growing topic in the digital space. It's a subject that we're asked about often and are able to provide solutions for. I think the first question we usually get is just, where do I start with this? So when working towards accessibility, there are many different solutions out there that can help. From our experience though, you usually want to start by completely scanning your site and have professionals go through and fix the errors that are found. If your site was not originally built with accessibility in mind, this can result in big sweeping changes, which is why we often see older sites opt to do a full redesign during this kind of process. Accessibility also takes ongoing vigilance and maintenance. As you make changes to your site, it's common to have some slip-ups that break from these accessibility guidelines. This is why we recommend to have your site routinely scanned for errors and have experts execute any changes needed. There are also plugins available that can provide a bit of a safety net by making live changes while a user is browsing the site. These can be great for like an extra layer of protection, but it's still smart to find these errors and permanently correct them in the code when you're able to. If you feel you need any advice on these accessibility options, feel free to reach out. We have solutions available and can advise on how to cover yourself and how to maintain accessibility throughout your site's lifetime. So this is a question we get asked a lot. Basically, a lot of people kind of sit down and think, well, does the whole site need to be redesigned if I'm just off on a few of these things, or if I just have a couple errors in these topics? And when it comes to a large amount of accessibility issues or lack of mobile responsiveness, I would usually say yes. One thing that comes up is, couldn't programming just be tweaked to make my existing website passable? Yes, you could do that, but I wouldn't recommend it as the ideal option. If your site was already designed without mobile responsive capabilities or without ADA in mind, then the chances are high that no thought of these things factored into the overall layout. Beyond just being responsive to the screen size, it's also important that as someone's designing this, you design a modern site with mobile in mind throughout the entire process. Our design process here takes a mobile-first approach when tackling the goals for any new website design. This makes for a better experience overall. This helps to create a site that can respond to any situation in an understandable and elegant way. It creates an experience that can be navigated by anyone on any platform. This is why it's so important to design for both desktop and mobile devices simultaneously, and why it's so important to design with accessibility in mind throughout the whole process. A modern website needs to operate seamlessly no matter what the device is and no matter who the user is. So the next topic is going to touch on if you're providing a premium user experience. This is a great question to reflect on when reviewing your current digital tools, your ability to get web visitors to convert. This topic should usually be looked at from a pretty wide perspective. And what I mean by that is kind of from the start of the timeline to the end of it. So from when a prospect first hears about you to the very end of the goal that you have for these users. So whether that's someone discovering you, opening an account, filling out a form, user experience needs to be the primary goal of your web development team. There was a recent article actually in the Financial Brand that was looking into some very interesting online statistics that were reported by Bank of America. Stats like adding over 2 million active digital clients in 2021, reporting 86% of their deposits are being made through digital means. 70% of overall households banking with them are actively using digital platforms, and over 700,000 appointments were booked digitally in 2021, which is a large increase from previous years. All this to say is in our current time, many users want to be able to complete as much as possible without having to step into a branch. It's also worth noting that this isn't just beneficial to your users. Institutions that commit to digital banking restructuring will often spend less money in their product delivery and operating costs in the long run. So it's important to review your services and identify if there's any gaps in your process where you don't give a user a way to act on it digitally. For example, if a user lands on your homepage already wanting to start a mortgage, navigating through to that goal should be effortless on their end. It should also have minimal steps that they can't take digitally as they go through the process. So how do we make that happen? Start by looking at your digital marketing and how you're driving traffic to the site. Are you reaching the people that you need to? Are they taking action once they get there? And are we able to track users through this process to gain more data that we can leverage later? Your website will serve as your virtual branch that users can access at any time to research your services and ask questions and establish and expand banking relationships. And most importantly, just have access to their accounts. So if you're not meeting this needs, then that translates directly into less opportunity for you to get the things that you want. Whenever it's possible, it's very important to remove barriers to entry for your users. The easier it is for them to quickly accomplish their goal on the site, the more likely they are to take decisive action. So it's all about simplicity, which ironically can often be hard to achieve in a design. So on any given page of your site, think about what the user's needs are, and then go through and think about the avenues you're currently giving them to accomplish those needs. Are the call to actions obvious and useful, or is there no clear way forward? If you don't present your users with intuitive ways to move forward, then the chances are they're just going to stop and not take that next step. Is the layout of a page's content easily digestible, or is it dull and confusing? Your users deserve content that's worth their time. Keep it simple and on task. Making great content can be difficult, but can drastically affect the user experience. One thing I'd like to bring up on this point is actually the idea of above the fold. So most of you are probably familiar with this concept, but for anyone who isn't, it's the idea that a website design should have all of your most important information or call to actions accessible without having to scroll. This is a great design principle, but also, in my opinion, it's one that often gets used to justify the most bad decisions made. It means to show your most important items or goals and kind of make a hierarchy of them and put those above the fold in that order. But it does not mean that you should try to cram everything above the fold. That's something that I've seen so much, and I'm sure we've all been on sites that are guilty of this. where everything's kind of crammed together at the top and all of it equally screams for your attention. This is just one common example of how you can confuse your users. Which leads to our next point. If I get confused, is there an obvious way I can reach out for help? Or do I have to search around for a way to contact you? Don't make getting in contact with you difficult for users. If you can, even provide different avenues that they can reach you by. Another stat that was reported by Bank of America is that 24 million users completed 123 million interactions using their chatbot in Q4 of 2021. So chat systems and chatbots can be extremely effective ways to initiate that communication between you and your users. Your website should always make it simple to get help when needed, especially when reaching out for help is actually a great way for you to secure some information or data from the user. So it's kind of a twofold benefit for you to make this easy. Identifying users is such an important step when you start delving deeper into analytics and automation, which we'll be touching on in a little bit. But before we do, if you've gotten this far into like reviewing your site and just your digital services, the ones that you provide, this is also a great time to review any third-party services you might be using. I think sometimes we all fall into the mistake of thinking that if it's not a service we directly control, then it doesn't reflect poorly on our site. But that's just not true. Go through your site and find the places that you lead someone to a calculator or to an application that runs through a third party. Go through those and pretend you're filling it out and reach the end steps and all of that. Judge that experience for yourself. Anything that you have built into your site or recommend to your users is going to be part of your site in their eyes. So you should be just as critical and thoughtful about what third-party resources you use as you are with your own. If the external digital services that you use aren't up to par, there's plenty of options available. LKCS has many custom tools available that we've built ourselves, and if there's something that we don't currently offer, then we're more than familiar with this, and we'd love to give advice and point you in the right direction for whatever you're looking for. So don't let an outdated service that you've been settling for drag your site's user experience down. Next, we'll be talking a bit about generating new leads. So how is your site currently generating interest in your products and services and then converting that interest into new members or new accounts? If you can't answer that question, then we need to talk. The most successful websites guide prospects with personalized content, driving them to kind of provide their contact details. This is what I was mentioning a bit earlier. This can be achieved through gated contact, email subscriptions, calculators, or web forms. At that point, automated follow-up continues providing relevant information to these prospects, resulting in the highest possible conversion rates. So usually when you're starting to do something like this, you'll begin by outlining your goals and collecting data. Ideally, you'll set up goals for your digital services and ways to track the results. Data is needed for personalization and automation. These are two processes that factor greatly into your lead generation. So we'll start with personalization. Personalization can be used throughout your digital marketing to more accurately focus your efforts. When used correctly, it can be an effective way to create campaigns or just moments that are more relevant to each specific user. It can be used for simple things like using their first name in an email to make it more personal, or it can be used for more complex experiences like providing variable content on pages of your site. That's kind of what I meant when I said moments. For example, if you were tracking the behavior of certain users, you might gain insights into what products they're interested in. With this information, you could format specific elements of a page to swap out or change to reflect that interest. So if we had identified a specific user was interested in auto loans, We could reflect that in places like the banner ads, quick links throughout the website, or even testimonials that show up as they browse. This would give them more chances to take action, or even automatically offer them a promotion to get them to take that last step. It should also be mentioned here that this doesn't always have to be used to promote and sell products. It can also be used to inform your users and offer tools that are specific to their needs. Most consumers do see their financial institutions as secure and competent, but a statistic by Accenture indicates that 43% of them, only 43% of them, trust that their bank is actually interested in their long-term financial well-being, which is interesting. It's why it's important to see things from your user's perspective and find ways to deliver on consistent, accountable, and enjoyable services when you can. Personalization can be used in just a myriad of creative ways to improve your users' experiences, while at the same time improving your lead generation. Next, we'll talk a little bit about automation. So with everything we've done with personalization, you usually mirror it with automation when you can, using a marketing automation platform that kind of makes you work smarter, not harder. Automation takes your marketing to a different level. With automation, we can use the data that we've been collecting to take users down certain marketing tracks. These preset tracks can be created to consistently present the right offers to people based on previous behaviors or previous actions they've taken throughout our site. And this is because automation is pretty much always combined with personalization. Obviously, one of the best things about automation is that it takes a bit of the pressure off your marketing team. I do think the idea of fully automating your marketing efforts isn't really the result. So sorry to any marketers out there that are picturing themselves kicking back with their feet up on the desk. But after setting it up, it frees more of your time to do less of the busy work that comes with running these campaigns and focus on the high concept stuff and managing those campaigns. So automation takes a lot of the thought and groundwork to initially get it set up, but after that's done, it can start humming along on its own in the background. You still need to be on top of it as it goes, so reviewing data and statistics, improving and refining the tracks it's taking your users down, and editing the touch points to kind of perfect them. But with some time, you'll have created an elegant solution to many of your marketing needs that does a lot of the footwork on its own. From there on out, it's all about supervising to just make sure your system stays updated and keeps improving over time. Like personalization, the sky is kind of the limit with how creative you can get with automation. Using data you've gathered from your users, you can do some incredibly focused marketing. When done subtly and correctly, this will be an extremely effective tool for lead generation. LKCS has several solutions and suggestions to get you started with personalization and automation. We don't have the time available in this webinar to do a real deep dive into them right now. So if you're interested in either of those topics, please reach out to us and we can get a conversation started. So after hearing all this, and you might be wondering, what are the next steps? What do I do next? So if you've reviewed some of the things I've presented here and you're finding out that your current efforts just aren't up to par, well, it's time to start planning for some updates. The good news is that throughout this webinar and throughout the work you've done, we've already identified some of the main issues of your current digital services. But what we've been going through here are just some of the bigger red flags. Before jumping straight into a new project, it's still important to do a bit of research and make decisions about your new direction. Looking at what your competitors are offering, whether local or national, you can start to identify features and digital tools that you need to be competing with. It's smart to be aware of what kind of services are being offered around you. Even if some of them aren't items that you can act on immediately, you can at least build with these future goals in mind. So spend just some time reflecting on what separates you from these competitors. What can you offer that they don't? What makes you unique to your audience? How can you represent these ideals throughout that user experience? Browse the web with a purpose. Find some websites that you like. As you're browsing the web, keep tabs on the websites that you personally found enjoyable to just experience. Identify what it is about these sites that made your experience on it better. Uh, when you're doing research like this, especially if you're looking into design or even out of the box tools, don't feel like you have to restrict yourself to your specific industry. For instance, if you're a financial institution, don't feel like you can only draw inspiration from banks or credit union websites. Like we talked about before, this can be very useful when comparing digital services and tools, but design inspiration can be drawn from anywhere. And doing this research and writing notes will give your designers kind of a mood board of the styles, tools, and features that you want to see incorporated in your next build. So our next big topic is going to be keeping relevant. Whether you do a redesign of your website or a full revamp of your digital services, here's something to keep in mind. Don't let this happen again. Of course, it probably will because everything eventually succumbs to time, but at least you do your best to keep everything relevant longer. I know that probably sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised how far a bit of organization and maintenance goes. Always be on lookout for the things that I've been talking about throughout the webinar, and keep making goals. Take time to identify issues and then take strides to improve that experience. Eventually, every project will probably go out of date, but there are plenty of ways to keep things fresh. These shouldn't just be something you set up and forget. Yes, digital services are an avenue to automation and can be less hands-on, but I'd heavily argue with anybody who's trying to completely take their hands off the ball. Even automated campaigns take careful curation at the start and then continue tweaking to get the best results. Ignoring maintenance and updates can cause your site to age faster, putting you back into the situation that caused a rework in the first place. So keep active and keep improving. For example, here's one things we do with our websites. So we send out biannual care reports to all of our clients that have websites with us. In this report, we review the site and point out anything that we see as troubling or outdated. This is our way of helping clients keep up with this task. It's not always easy to stay vigilant about your own site. Web trends and best practices are always changing, and they always will be. So we like to assist our clients with advice on maintaining a modern web presence. So that covers everything I wanted to discuss when thinking about your digital branch. I hope this helps. If you were interested in updating and learning what you should be critical about when looking at your digital services, I hope that after this you feel like you have a bit more understanding on website redesigns and some of the topics that come with it. As always, here at LKCS, we're ready to help you with any new projects you may have in mind. So please get in contact with any of our sales reps to get started. Again, I'm Tom Quessy, head of digital sales here at LKCS. If anybody has any questions now, I'm going to stay on the line for the next few minutes to answer anything that comes through the chat. Thanks so much for attending this webinar, and we hope to see you at the next one.